Hey, it's Mike, Solar Religion Dystopia. I want to talk a little bit about the balloon situation, which are not really balloons. They're actually called Satelloons. Here's some of the images of some of the alleged balloons that have been shot down and etc. Alright, you can go to detail if you want about it. Let's see what else we can do. We're going to have a little teaching here. We're going to learn about Satelloons, where satellites really go. And if they told you they went into deep outer space, in the vacuum of space, no. They never went anywhere like that. So where are we at with this? Where did we go? Where do we go? Where do we go? Where do we go? So this is an image of an alleged Satelloon. I'll show you an image that I filmed Sunday night above my house on the border of Michigan and Ohio. Well, it should be Ohio and Michigan because I live in Ohio, right? So, and this same thing was showing up right there, yeah. And this stuff was going on too. I didn't get too many good images because when I was looking out my kitchen window and I was seeing things, I was like, what is that big streak? This this bright streak in the sky, and lighting up the rooftops and the telephone wires. Well, it turns out that there's a war going on, and there is an upper atmosphere war going on. They're going to try to tell us it's outer space and it's aliens and all that nonsense. But did you know that there's been numerous projects? I mean, we're talking not just a few, but dozens upon dozens upon dozens upon dozens upon dozens of projects and private corporations that have been putting up, well, in the upper atmosphere, not in space, this is the upper atmosphere, and it's misleading because it's really down here. Not a few hundred, not a few thousand, not a few tens of thousands. More likely, probably between 500,000 to 1 million Satelloons over the past 60 years. The real satellites. Did you know that there's been 300 years plus more of that, well over that, of balloon technology? Did you know that they can have balloons, Satelloons? That's a satellite that's hovering above the sky with these things. I don't want to have any more copyright issues than that. See, if I don't open it up, they can't really nail me for it, right? But you know that they have hundreds of thousands of these things, dozens upon dozens of private corporations, along with military corporations, have been putting these things up in the upper atmosphere. Did you know that there are special squadrons of planes designated in the U.S. Air Force and others to capture these things when they fall? And if they can't capture them, guess what they do? They blow them up. And then you know what they say? It's the other guys. Now, why would you say, or ask yourself this question, why would they do such a thing as blow up their own satellites? Well, what if the general populace were to find out the truth? That our own government's been spying literally on us in every single thing that we do for 2 generations, maybe more, depending on how you look at it. At least 2 generations. And the Satelloons have been around forever. Did you know that the Satelloon technology, by the 1970s, they had already figured out how to have these things up to last for over a year? Not just over a year, 5 years, not just over that. By the time it was the 1980s and the early 90s, they had proven that for over a decade they could have these balloons stationary in one spot. What do you think is going on now? 30 years later. Oh, they got it figured out all right. What's the issue? We're in the middle of a planned reset, eugenics program, a resetting of things. And part of that is the war. War space, right? And who is the real enemies? And what are the real alien objects? Flying saucers. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there's not such things as UFOs as well. We'll talk about that someday. But the things that they're really concerned about, that these Satelloons get in the hands of the quote-unquote their enemies, on both sides, by the way, and all sides, whether it's the Russians, the Chinese, the Americans, the Brits, the Germans, blah, 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 all everyone. Everyone's got their little hand in the pie up there in the sky. You see? So what has been going on in the past week or so? What happened above my house? Around 8 p.m. on the border of Ohio and Michigan, when a long streak of light blazed across the sky, and it wasn't a meteorite. It wasn't. It wasn't a comet. It was one of these things. And there was more than just one of those things. Now they're saying, oh, these Chinese satellites and all that. Oh my gosh, that's why we got to blow them out of the sky, and we got to make sure you guys never find out that they're ours. Why? Because if they found out that it had all, the U.S. Air Force and etc. on it, NASA and that, you know what? After a while, my people might be asking a question like, why are there so many of our own satellites coming down? I thought that they were way up there in outer space, in the vacuum of space. Of course, anybody with any common sense would know that anything in a vacuum couldn't last. You know, just down the road from me in Sandusky, Ohio, they had this big facility where they try to figure out what it'd be like to be in a vacuum, a space, in a vacuum. And you know what happened? The blood started boiling, and everything turned into ceramic or tin foil and crumpled up into a ball. No, we can't go past a certain point. Not practically. Not with our contractions. But we can go up in the upper atmosphere. And with balloon technology called Satelloons, believe it or not, there is such a thing as Satelloons. You can look it up. It's becoming more and more censored. I noticed it was much easier to find 5 years ago. I stopped paying attention. I figured that other people would tell the truth. But clearly this is what's going on. What's going on is somebody has figured out how to bring down our Satelloons. And before you and I and the rest of the public find out what's going on, well, let's make sure that they don't find out that they're ours. Because then the general public might be asking more questions. After all, we've been betraying them for so long, and people don't trust us. If they were to find out for once that your government, your military, were spying on you and everything that you do, well, you know what? What would be the odds of you being too eager to fight their wars, or give them your money or your blessings for all the machinations and evil things they're doing? Let's look at this a little bit. So this is this one streak. I didn't have enough time. I did not have enough time to get the camera ready to film everything. I'm looking out into my kitchen window, and what the hell is that streak in there? Now it's very deceiving because it's much brighter than you imagine, and I'm not even using a flash on my camera. That's how bright that is up in the sky, right? And you can see there's other things going on around it, yeah? Like something might be either coming off it or following it. In fact, something is following it. As you can see, there's something following it. There's some... There it is. There's like some kind of plane or something following it. Mind you, this is through the trees at night, dark. What did happen was that my neighbor's roofs were lit up, and so was the telephone wires. Like something shot it down. I'm going to see if I can... I wasn't able to film the balloon. I mean, it happened so fast, I had no idea. I couldn't figure out what was happening to me. Something's going on in there. And I think it's, we can't see it because, well, you see there's something going on here. This is terrible evidence. So don't be like, you know, counting on it as the greatest of evidence. But I'm just saying this is what, partly of what I saw. Somewhere in this blur, I tried to film a balloon. It was going from west to east, and pretty much parallel with the Ohio-Michigan border. This is the same weekend, 24 hours later, from when they allegedly were, you know, no-fly zone or whatever, ban over Lake Michigan and shot down one over Lake Huron and all that. Sorry if I failed you, because I didn't have enough time to get outside and to film something. By the time I got the camera, I got MS too, so it takes me a while to even get down there. I'm watching this streak in front of me lighting up the sky. By the time I got there, I only got a little fraction of what it was. That line was like, by the time I took that one picture, or that short bit of film, it dissipated. It was probably a tenth of the size of what it was when I originally saw it. And by the time I got to film, try to get another picture, it dissipated completely. It disappeared, like it burned up. What was ironic was on the east side of my house, as I looked to the east from my back, there was this, you know, well, it looked kind of like this color right here, but think of it as a balloon like this, or a satellite like that. It was round, but this kind of color. What am I trying to say here is that what's going on is just more machinations and shenanigans. It's irresponsible and just terrible what they're putting us through, each and every one of us. See, they don't want you and I to find out that there are hundreds of thousands. Sort of forget about Starlink and all that, and Elon Musk's projects. He's nothing. He's just there as a decoy. He's a distraction. There are multiple companies throughout the world. There's one, I think it's out of New Zealand called Luna Project or something like that. I can't remember. It's been 6 years since I looked into it. 5 years, 6 years. I have to go back and look at the. Maybe I even have the image. I don't know if I have the image. Images. Anyways, it doesn't matter. You look it up. What I'm telling you is what's going on is our own military shooting down our own Satelloons so that you and I don't figure out that it's what's going on and what's coming down on us. And the Chinese and the Russians are having to go left. By the way, this is happening all over the place because somebody figured out how to bring these Satelloons down. And there's not enough planes out there to get them all. So what do they got to do? They got to blow them up. That's what's going on. So who are you? I am nobody. A nobody like me could figure this out. Alright? The U.S. Air Force is blowing them up so the public doesn't figure out what's going on up there in the upper atmosphere. Clearly someone has figured out how to bring them down from the upper atmosphere. The U.S. government is trying to say they're Chinese balloons when they are Satelloons coming down. They're U.S. Satelloons. Let's do some teaching. I'm sorry if I sound arrogant like I'm Mr. Know-It-All. I'm not Mr. Know-It-All. I just know a few things and I know what I'm seeing. So you have a satellite. Let's say the square is a satellite. And then this little dot is a little camera, right? And then if you use a balloon, and that's what they do. They take it up a certain height, and then the balloon takes it the rest of the way. Or they can actually just launch it off from the ground. Actually, they do that constantly out in Antarctica and all that kind of stuff, right? Now, people are saying they're seeing these things all over the place, right? So once they're up in the upper atmosphere, and here we are, we're down here. This is the Earth. I wonder if I can get that and turn it into it doesn't even matter. It's supposed to be the Earth. I think you'll get the point. But here's the thing. Then they have planes. And they have a little kind of kind of like a hook on it. And when these things start going down, drifting downwards to the Earth, before anybody can know about it, they go here and they hook onto this balloon and they take it back to one of the different bases. From what I understand, there's one at least in Texas, one in Antarctica, and I think one in Germany at least, from ours on the west side. God knows what the Russians have and the Chinese have and whoever else has. All right? They bring them back to those bases. If they can repair them, they'll send them back up. If it's not repairable, it doesn't matter because they're mass production like cars. By the hundreds of thousands. Literally. And why spend all this money taking something like this, right? We'll say this is our satellite. And when we'll say that this is a million miles away, a million miles, 1,099 red balloons. All right? When you can do the same thing and do just as good a job, if not a better job, and retrieve it at any time you needed to, and say that it is, say, anywhere from 60 miles. And that's a very low number. I would have to say it's probably not even the right number. We'll say it's, well, how high is the upper atmosphere? How high is the upper atmosphere, stratosphere, right? Something like that, doesn't really matter. Upper atmosphere of the Earth. Do. So it starts about, let's see, let me find something here. I can always chop that off if I so feel like it. I don't feel like it. What are the 7 layers of the atmosphere? So we have the Earth. He has the 7 atmospheres, right? Most people learn this in science and all that. But I have forgotten more things than I ever learned. The outermost layer is exosphere, right? So you can go anywhere up to the exosphere, which actually becomes very hostile. Atmosphere for kids. Troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, exosphere. So somewhere in there, in between there, you're capable of having. So it's not going to be in the troposphere. So the troposphere is 10 kilometers. Okay? That's where you have your weather and your rain and your snow and your wind and all that. Okay. What's next? Stratosphere, which is 50 kilometers. Okay? There's the ozone layer and all that kind of stuff. So you want to go past 50 kilometers. Then you got the mesosphere, right? Did I get that right? So the mesosphere is like 85 kilometers. Temperature, 90 degrees minus Celsius. Okay. The next one is 500 kilometers, which is the thermosphere. Temperature, 2,000 degrees Celsius. So we don't want that. So practically speaking, where we're going to want this at, our satellites and Satelloons, is the very upper part of the stratosphere, right? So about 50 kilometers in that range. In that range, somewhere, let's say 30, let's say 40 to 50 kilometers up in the sky, you could have, or 60 kilometers. You know, people are talking about these balloons being shot down about 60 kilometers. 50 kilometers, 60 kilometers. Somewhere over there between that, where then that sweet zone is, where there's no wind, there's no extreme temperature, and where you can maintain Satelloons for long periods of time. We've got the technology to do it. Once it's in its stationary orbit, it pretty much stays there, unless the balloon itself starts losing helium, air, and all that kind of stuff, and then it starts drifting back down. Okay, that's what's going on. And in a nutshell, that's exactly what's going on. And what's happening is they're coming down, right? They knew they were going to come down. Werner von Braun, he knew that they were going to be coming down. He was in the space program in NASA. He knew what the big agenda was. The Rocketeer stuff was just a distraction and a delivery system to send explosives and bombs to other parts of the world. The real stuff that was going to mean anything was the endless amount of Satelloons up there in the upper atmosphere. The balloon technology, very inexpensive, relatively speaking, compared to rockets and fuel and everything else with it, right? Once they're in a certain spot, that sweet spot in the upper atmosphere, then they will stay there, and they have argued, they said in their own papers, whether it's true or not, because they lie about everything, that they could be up there for over a decade. Maybe 2 decades now. Who knows? 2023, maybe they could be up there for 3 or 4 decades. Who the heck knows? As long as there's enough air and there's no complications, right? That's exactly what's going on. And so when they're like, oh my gosh, the Chinese are coming to send their balloons. Well, what about our own balloons? Why would China send its silly balloons over us? Now, there's 2 folds here, right? Now, why are they doing this with this whole thing, right? When it comes to the faking the alien invasion, what is that really about? It's a decoy, and it's when people start seeing, they say, oh, they're UFOs, right? Dull, grayish, metallic objects, right? What it looks like a dull metallic grayish object. Well, these son of a guns. That's what it does. Now, they polished this one up to make it real good, but you can see what it is. That's what it is. That's what it is. That's what we've been looking at all this time. So, okay. So then you got that. So the Chinese, they're going to waste their time sending weather balloons over us. Now, the other thing is, too, with the V word, right? The thing that we've been dealing with the past 3 years. It can be a delivery system for the V things, right? And they can blame it on that, and this is what they'll use for the war and all that kind of stuff. The more important thing in all this is not that they're afraid or concerned about another government agency. They're afraid of you and I. The general populace, because we outnumber them 100 to 1. You see? And if people were to wake up and realize what's been going on and how we've been hoodwinked our whole lives about everything, the last thing anybody's going to be very compliant about is doing anything that they want us to do. So they got to call the herd. Now, they've been doing this stuff for generations. Every other generation or so, what they do is, once people realize the sham that is the fiat currency, the banking system, right? And that people start realizing, like myself, the religion, and you, many of you, religion is part of the mind control. And so is television mind control, and so is the public fool system, and so is everything, right? Because it's all about steering us. Government itself is about governing the mind, steering the mind. When the herd gets tired of it, right, and they rebel, well, you got to do something. Well, you got to be ahead of the game, right? So what do? You start these wars. Endless wars. They never end, never cease. People say, oh, yeah, we want peace and this. No, they don't want peace. They never want to have peace. They can't afford to have peace, people. Because if they have peace, that would give you and I and everyone enough time to dig ourselves out of the grave they've given us. So that's it, in a nutshell. If that made sense, I'll say it once more. It's most likely, odds are, they're ours. If they were actually Chinese Satelloons, or balloons for that matter, they wouldn't shoot them down. They would capture them and parade them. Say, look what's happening. Look. If they're Russian. By the way, this is supposed to be happening all over the place. So somebody's figured out some way to bring these things down. This is all part of that space race. Right? Yeah, that's what it's all about, folks. They don't want you and I to find out about this. Because once you realize that they spent all that money just to put balloons up in the atmosphere with cameras and etc. looking down on us, that you know what you're gonna ask the question, where did all that money go? And where's all this money gone? And why are these people living in big mansions? And why are they been lying about this stuff? And why didn't they tell us the truth? You're going to start asking questions upon questions. We can't afford that. You can't afford that. You cannot afford the truth. You see, the truth, they say it will set you free. It'll set you free. The damnedest thing, it will set you free. They can't afford that. That's right. It's just the damn Satelloons are shooting down. And most likely, odds are, they're our own. Well, they might be Chinese. They might be Russian. They might have a Chinese label on it. But they all look the same. And they're all working together. Because they can't afford to have the gig, exposed. They can't afford to be exposed. Because people realize that there's their oligarchs and the plutocracy that manages the plantations that we live on, that they might get a little pissed off. People might get pissed off and say, really, I don't want to send my sons and daughters to die in your wars. I don't want to give you any money. Why should I want to give you a dime of anything? Look at what you try to do to us over and over again. Bring us down and stifle us and hurt us and zap us away. I'm trying to think of the word. Unlive us. Unlive us, is that what it's called? That's what's going on. By the way, they're going to try to, this is all, so once again, it's all this stuff, like Von Braun, we talked about the different stages of the V word and the fake alien invasion and the fake asteroid thing, and what is the other crap that they have? A few other things. Oh yeah, the Cold War thing, and then it was the terrorist thing. And when all this stuff wears out, because they know it's going to wear out, because there's only a life. Each scam only has a certain amount of life to it, and then it's done. It's over with, and they got to replace it with the next thing. So they're throwing everything in the kitchen sink at us as we wake up, because you know what? You wake up and you're going to realize, no, we're not going to fight your wars. We see what you're doing to the food. We see what you're doing to the medicine. We see what you're doing to the water. We see what you're doing. And we all see what you're doing. And all roads lead to those black magicians, those wizards, those warlocks in the Vatican and all the other places just like that. The Brotherhood of the Serpent. They worship a dragon. Did you know that? I'm not making this up. They really do. They all do at the top, and they know it. That's why they call themselves the Brotherhood of the Serpent. Anyways, that's for another lesson.